So let's start with something that surprises most people when they first hear it. Your brain has no dedicated clock. None. There's no single region, no biological metronome sitting somewhere in your skull going tick, tick, tick. When you experience the passage of time, when you feel like 5 minutes have passed, or an hour, or a decade, your brain is essentially making an educated guess. It's stitching together information from memory, emotion, attention, and body chemistry, and constructing a narrative of time that feels completely real, but is almost entirely manufactured. And the reason this matters isn't just philosophical. It has real consequences for your day-to-day life, for why certain experiences feel like they matter more than others, why your childhood feels vast and your adulthood feels like it's accelerating, and honestly, why you're probably misremembering large chunks of your own life right now. Let's get into how this actually works. Here's the first piece of the puzzle. Your brain operates on a slight delay. By the time you consciously experience something, a sound, a touch, a visual, it's already about 80 milliseconds in the past. That's a fraction of a second, and normally you'd never notice. But here's where it gets interesting. Your brain doesn't just passively receive sensory input. It predicts what it expects to happen, compares that to what actually happened, and then presents you with a kind of polished final cut. Neuroscientists call this predictive processing. Your brain is constantly running a model of the world, and your conscious experience is less like a live feed and more like a news broadcast, produced, edited, and delivered just slightly after the events actually occurred. Now here's where time perception gets pulled into this. Because if your brain is constructing your experience of reality rather than just recording it, then your experience of duration, how long something takes, is also constructed. And the raw material it uses to build that experience? It's attention and memory. Specifically, how much attention you're paying and how many distinct memories get formed. Think about this. What if the reason your life feels like it's speeding up as you get older has nothing to do with time at all? There's a concept in neuroscience sometimes called the attentional gate model. The basic idea is this: the more mental resources you devote to tracking time, the slower it seems to pass. The less attention you give it, the faster it goes. You've experienced this in both directions. When you're sitting in a waiting room with nothing to do, staring at the clock, time crawls. You're allocating cognitive resources specifically to monitoring duration, and your brain is accumulating a lot of time markers, which makes the interval feel longer. But when you're completely absorbed in something, a great conversation, a book you can't put down, a flow state at work, you look up and 2 hours are gone. You weren't tracking time. Your attentional gate was essentially closed to the passage of time, so your brain accumulated almost no markers. Very little was recorded, and the interval feels compressed in memory. This is the first major way your brain lies to you about time. It conflates attention with duration. When you're bored and hyper-aware of time, your brain tells you time is moving slowly, even though the clock says otherwise. When you're engaged, your brain tells you time moved quickly, and the clock confirms it, but somehow it still feels like a lie. But attention alone doesn't explain everything. Here's where it gets a little more profound. There's a difference between how long something feels while it's happening, which is called prospective time, and how long it feels when you look back on it, which is called retrospective time. And these two things can point in completely opposite directions. Remember your last vacation? While you were there, every day might have felt full, rich, stretched out, because you were in a new environment. Everything was novel. Your brain was firing on all cylinders, recording new information. But now, looking back, the whole trip might feel like a blur. Maybe it feels like it went by too fast. Meanwhile, think about a miserable stretch of time, a tough month at a job you hated, a period of illness or stress. While you were in it, time dragged. But looking back, those weeks might feel long and dense because your brain formed a lot of memories. there was a lot to process. This is the memory theory of time perception. Retrospective duration is basically an estimate of how much happened. Specifically, how many distinct episodes and novel experiences your memory encoded.
More memories, more content means a longer feeling interval in retrospect. This means the secret to a life that feels long and full might be genuinely uncomfortable. More novelty, more challenge, more of the things that feel hard in the moment. Because the brain doesn't lengthen your subjective lifetime by giving you more of the same, it lengthens it by having more to remember. Comfort and routine are cognitively invisible. They don't create timestamps. They compress into nothing. Now let's talk about one of the most dramatic examples of time distortion, the slow motion effect during a crisis. People who've been in car accidents, near drowning experiences, falls, they almost universally report the same thing. Time seemed to slow way down. They had what felt like minutes to think, to perceive details, to watch things unfold in slow motion. For a long time, people assumed this meant the brain was literally speeding up, processing faster under extreme stress. But research has largely debunked that idea. In a famous study, participants were dropped from a height wearing a special display on their wrist. If the brain was actually processing faster, they'd be able to read numbers that flashed too quickly for normal perception. They couldn't. So what's actually happening? The current best explanation involves the amygdala, a region deep in your brain heavily involved in emotional processing and threat response. When the amygdala activates under extreme stress, it essentially commandeers additional memory resources. It forces your brain to form memories at a much higher resolution. More detail, more sensory information, more episodic recording happening in a short window. And here's the key. When you later recall the event, your brain interprets that density of memory as evidence that the interval was long. More memories packed into a short period gets decoded as, "That must have taken a long time." The slow motion effect isn't happening in real time. It's a retrospective illusion created by the richness of the memory. Which is kind of amazing and slightly terrifying when you think about it. If the slow motion effect is a trick of memory, what else are you misremembering about the duration of your own experiences? Here's another layer. Your internal body state affects time perception directly. When you're in a high arousal emotional state, excited, anxious, deeply engaged, your body temperature rises slightly, your heart rate increases, and your internal pacemaker speeds up. This accelerated internal rhythm means more ticks accumulate in a given real-world interval, which makes that interval feel longer while you're in it. This is why fear makes time feel slow, not just the memory density effect, but a genuine physiological shift in your internal rhythm. High arousal equals faster internal clock equals more elapsed subjective time. The opposite is also true. Cold environments, relaxed states, certain medications, they slow your internal rhythm down, and time passes faster without you noticing. There's also the dopamine connection. Research has found that dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation, plays a significant role in time perception. Higher dopamine activity tends to make your internal clock run faster, making time feel longer. Lower dopamine activity, like in depression, slows it down, which is why depressive states are often characterized by a sense of time moving like thick, slow tar. This has a practical implication that I think is genuinely important. Your perception of time is, in part, a readout of your emotional and physical state. When you feel like time is dragging unbearably, that's not just an observation about the external world. It's information about your internal chemistry. All right, let's bring this all together with the question that probably affects you the most personally. Why does time seem to accelerate as you get older? When you were 8, a single summer felt infinite. A year was a vast stretch of time. Now, years seem to fold into each other,
and you genuinely cannot remember where the last 6 months went. Part of this is mathematical. A year when you're 8 is 1/8 of your entire life. A year when you're 40 is 1/40th. Each unit of time is proportionally smaller relative to your total experience. But the more neurologically interesting explanation goes back to novelty and memory. When you're a child, almost everything is new. You're constantly forming memories because almost every day has something novel in it. A new word, a new social experience, a new place, a new fear or joy. Your brain is recording at full capacity all the time. So looking back, childhood feels enormous. There was just so much content.
As you get older, you fall into routines. You take the same routes, eat similar foods, interact with the same people, do familiar work. Your brain, which is an efficiency machine above everything else, starts to compress these experiences. Been here before? Don't need to record this. And so huge swaths of time get laid down in memory as virtually nothing. Just thin, repetitive entries that offer no texture, no distinctiveness. The result is that years disappear. And the fix, which is easier to say than to do, is to deliberately introduce novelty. New places, new skills, new conversations, new challenges. Not because it feels good in the moment, often it doesn't, but because it forces your brain to actually record your life rather than skip it. Think about the last 2 months. If you had to estimate how much of it your brain actually recorded in any detail, what percentage would that be? So here's where we land. Your brain has no clock. It's using attention, memory density, emotional arousal, novelty, and body chemistry to construct a feeling of duration that is genuinely unreliable by design. It has to be. Making exact time measurements at all times would be computationally insane. So instead, it makes fast, heuristic estimates that are good enough for navigating the world, but wildly inaccurate when examined closely. The boring meeting feels like 3 hours because you're monitoring time directly and forming lots of nothing happened timestamp entries. The vacation compresses in memory because, counterintuitively, the intense novelty that made it feel rich in the moment gets consolidated into fewer but more meaningful memory structures on the way out. The car accident feels like slow motion not because your brain sped up, but because your amygdala forced it to record everything. And you're interpreting that density of memory as length of time. And your life is speeding up not because you're getting older, but because you're getting more familiar with it. Once you see the machinery, it's impossible to stop seeing it. And maybe, just maybe, knowing that your brain is skipping over the unremarkable parts of your life, treating them as not worth recording, is reason enough to make the next period of your life a little less comfortable, a little more new, a little harder to compress. Because if your life is what your brain remembers of it, you probably want it to remember more. If you're the kind of person who finds this stuff as genuinely fascinating as I do, the way the brain constructs reality, bends time, and quietly edits your experience without asking, there's a lot more on this channel worth sticking around for. We go deep on neuroscience, psychology, and the weird gap between what your brain tells you is real and what's actually happening. Hit subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. And if you want to test your own time perception right now, there's another video queued up that I think will genuinely mess with your head. I'll see you in that one.